First of all, thank you so much for the organizer of this session, partners. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to deliver this session together. We are going to talk right now about SQL Azure Journey, the daily routine of a cloud DBA. So basically, it's about what is the main task that you are going to do if you are a DBA in the cloud. We are going to compare also with on-premises, what happened in SQL database, etc. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jose Manuel Jurado. I'm an escalation engineer working at Microsoft. You have all the details of contacts. I am working for Microsoft for more than 11 years. And right now I am supporting databases, Azure SQL Database, managed instance. I am a speaker in multiple events and also Microsoft certified trainer. With me is my colleague Juan. Juan, if you want to introduce yourself.
Him. Sorry, but we can't hear your colleague. No, wait. I can hear you only on my headset. I can't hear. Are you in the same room or?
No.
It won't work like this. Can you maybe call him on the phone and he will put you on his microphone or something like that?
Well, I don't know. So I'm able to hear.
Or you can click on the same link at your home, and this way you will. Są na tym samym linku. You need to join the conversation because you're not in the conversation. Jak on ma to tam dołączyć? No to mówi, że naklikał. And you need to put on your camera. It's in here. Okay. To jest drugiego kamera tutaj.
A pierwszego gdzie mamy?
No on był tutaj, ale później przełączył na to, nie?
Dobrze, to słyszysz dwóch, tak?
Tak, tutaj. Yeah. I don't know, the technicians are working on the problem, so...
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, what is the main reasons about, as I mentioned before, what is the main reasons about this session is? What is the tax? Sorry. Sorry, Juan. Okay, Juan is my colleague from, sorry, Juan. My colleague Juan is a super escalation engineer working also in Microsoft for more than 7 years right now. He is based on Madrid in Spain. He's a very, very good friend. And also he is a support engineer in SQL on-premises and high availability subject matter expert in this technology, and also working in hybrid team in Madrid. So, well, what is the main reason about, what are the topics that we are going to discuss about today about the session? Well, we are going to talk about my environment. So what is the tip and tricks that you need to know or you need to follow up when you choose your environment? We are going to have a discussion with a developer about it, and we are going to simulate our role play about this. Following, we are going to take our disaster recovery or the backup. So how to do this in the similar manner that we have in on-premises, but what is the options? What is the option that we have in on-premise? In Azure in order to do it. Also, we are going to check the high availability. You know that is very important about the high availability. We are going to do the same. We are going to compare and we are going to find what is the checklist that you need to follow up. Also, we are going to do about auditing and monitoring And finally, we are going to review how to monitor the performance, because we know that is very important. And right now, after it, we are going to, let's say, help other, because in Azure, it's very important. The role changed a little bit, because if you work for in order to reduce the cost, because you are going to pay for the service that you are using, in this case, it's very important to help other in order to achieve more and reduce the cost. Okay, this is the timetable. This is the actions that, let's say, as an example, that you need to do in your task list for every day. So we are going to start with my environment.
Can you listen to me now?
I'm hear you pretty well, Juan. I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
great.
perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. So right now, when we choose about my environment, when we are talking about what I need, let's say to move to use, in this case, Azure on VMs, we need to distinguish three things. The first thing is, if you need to plenty of access to use server, of course that you need to go to use SQL VMs, or in this case SQL Server on premises, because you have plenty of access to do everything, to install the service packs, to maintain or to update the SQL Server versions, patching, etc. Other things, it's when you choose about you want to manage the service, for example, for Microsoft, but you don't want to lose the chance to manage your instance, your SQL Server instance. You are going to lose the opportunity to get access to your server, but you are going to have the chance in order to, for example, restore the backups, run the service broker, SQL agent, etc. In this case, we need to choose the option that is called SQL Azure Managed Instance. If you don't need this one, you just only need the database, run time to time the automatic process, etc. In this case, it's the option that you have is to use is SQL Database as a services. And the end is basically it's a SQL database like a service. So once we have this, I'm going to review what is my notes. Okay, suppose that I'm going to decide what is the best choice for me if I move to, or if I use SQL Azure or SQL Database. So this is my notes. So beware about, if I choose SQL Server, SQL Database, I need to choose between two single flavors. Single, that is just only I need one database to run, or two or three databases, but around alone in this process, or I need to use Elastic Pool. Elastic Pool means when you want to have multiple databases sharing the same, let's say the same SQL instance. Okay, for the reason it's very important in order to reduce, for example, the cost. Other notes that I have is I want to use SQL Managed Instance. In this case, it's the best for you because we reduce a lot the friction that you have, or the effort that you have in order to move to SQL, because we have a high compatibility with SQL Server and full pass benefit. So it's important to remark two things about Azure SQL Database. You know that in on-premises, we have integration services, we have analysis services, and also we have reporting services. What I need to do if I need also to move the data or to move these services? Well, you could use, for example, if you're using integration services, you could use Azure Data Factory, or if you are using analysis services, you could use analysis services as a pass services, or if you want to use the reporting services, one option that you have is to use Power BI. So,
Manuel,
yeah.
Sorry, but in case I need not to use another service, but something that is so trivial for the on-premises guys, that is the SQL agent, do we have something on Azure that is equivalent to agent?
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for this question, because I like this question because, for example, if you want to use reporting services, basically is install a VM and install reporting services and connect directly to your managed instance or to your, for example, to your SQL database, for example. Other is integration services. Yes, of course. You could run in Azure Data Factory, you could run the integration services package in order to run the same package that you have. So at the end, let's say that the integration it's the same. So basically, you need to modify the connection settings. That's it. Okay. Right now, Juan, I think that I remember that you asked something about a particular project that you want to use, right? I remember something about it, right?
Yes. So let's start the morning as a cloud DBA, okay, as a normal DBA. And one of the things that I faced when I was a DBA is the developing team at first time of the day, okay, asking me, hey, we have a new database, we need to implement it, and now it's on Azure. So what is the best way to implement it on Azure?
This is a great question because at the end, beside that, if you have managed instance or you have a SQL database, one thing that I'm going to go through very quickly about the things, but for example, if you want to just use a SQL database, basically you have different flavors. I would like to highlight two things that we have many questions from the customer side. It's about the serverless. Serverless is a typical server that when you are not using this one, we are going to pause the cost. We are going to pause the server. So it's very important because at the end, you're not going to pay for the time that you're not going to use the database. And also it's auto scale. So if I need more, I'm going to pay more. And other things about hyperscale, depending on the size. So if you need to use more than 16 terabytes of data, of course, that you need to go to hyperscale or other services that we have like Synapse, but we are not going to talk about it. And about it is, for example, provisioning an elastic pool. But I would like to mention just only about provisioning is depending the I/O. So if I need, for example, to more I/O, to have a low latency, in this case, the best choice is business critical. Okay, or premium in DTU.
Okay, if you don't forget about it. I'm just a developer. We are a developer team. We need something to test online. So I'm not interested in on all this stuff. I'm not DBA, so please give me something easy to eat.
In this case, depending on the size, for me, is depending on the size and depending if you are going to interact with other ones. So I think that summarized, this is the question that I used to ask. Okay, so do you want just only one database? I'm going to use SQL database. I'm going to interact with other databases. I'm going to manage instance because I need to install or I need to review some other details. Okay, and also about the size because depending on the provision that we have in this project, we are going to use one of them. Okay, that's it.
Okay, got it. Okay. It's pretty clear to me. Okay. So now once we have take care of the developing people, okay, and once we help them to upload their database, let's start with this thing. One of the most common scenarios when we start as a DBA, one of the first things that we start to do is to check everything. Okay, we prepared some stuff for you as a check option list and the tools to use it. So we will start with the backups. Is that correct? With the disaster recovery solutions that we have.
Yeah.
So when you are on premises, okay, we have a lot of stuff to do, and the only way to check if a backup is correct is not just to say, okay, the backup is correctly generated. If you really are interested on your backup, what you will do is you will restore that backup in another machine and check if it is correct, if it is working fine, if there is no corruption there, and if everything went fine with that backup. But I think that in Azure is much more easier, and we don't need to do that. Is that correct, José Manuel?
Yes, it's correct, because in Azure SQL Database, in ongoing basis, let's say, we restore the data from, or the backups that automatically we are taking from the database, and we run several operations. If it's restored successfully, and also the check TV, etc. Yeah, it's correct. It's in this part.
Okay, so can you show me what are those specific things in Azure that make my life easier if I am a cloud DBA instead of an on-premise DBA?
Yes, for sure. So let me show you. For example, suppose that this database that I have right now, as you can see here, as you mentioned, Juan, how to, let's say, to run the backups. Automatically, for sure, when you create a database, we are going to start with the backups. Okay, as I mentioned before, we are going to have full backup, differential, etc. Basically, I need to choose the database that I have and specify what is or what are the retention policies that I need to do. Basically, I need to configure how many I'm going to maintain my point in time, how many days I'm going to maintain this time, and also how much time I'm going to run, or how many times we are going to run the differential backup frequency. It's very important to remark just only one thing, because it's based on the size. Because if you took just only every 12 hours, we are going to run the differential, you are going to increase the size of your backups. Okay, for the reason we left this option to the customer to choose this option. Of course, other things that we have, it's about long retention period. And the end, it's how to specify up to 10 years of backup in your database. So in this case, you have, it's very easy for you to configure the backup for the databases that you have. For example, as we mentioned, I think that in managed instance, or for example, on premises, at the end, it's very similar that you are doing right now, Juan. So it's just only go to for example, to review the backup is doing well. Basically, I need to go to the management option, review the error logs that we have, and based on this, I'm going to have all the details about my backup. Of course, that I remember that you develop an extended event, Juan, that you have the progress of the backups, etc. So at the end, yes, Juan, you could do the same. So in this case, in managed instance, you could do the same. I remember I forgot one thing that is very important. It's about, for example, beside that in Azure SQL DB, we are doing this backup and restore process, checking, etc. We have many questions from customers mentioned that, I know how the backup was going on, etc. Well, we have right now a new DMV that is we implemented recently. It's about the historical thing that you have the backups. So right now, if you run this DMV, you could see the backups history that you have about the backup is long. Sorry, it's a log transaction, differential backups, how many days in retention, etc. So you could implement. I think that you could integrate your tools that you have querying this DMV in order to obtain the same details that you have in on-premises.
And sorry, when I see the backup down here, I can be sure that the backup is correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I don't need to restore it to verify.
No, in SQL DB, no, there is not needed. In Azure, in managed instance, you could do it, but in our services, I'm not going to say 100, but at the end, the guarantee that you are going to have, we are going to have this. But I strongly recommend to run time to time to restore your database from another place and run the same that you are doing in on-premises.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I think it's much more easier in cloud than in on-premises, but because I can set all the frequency if I want to have only full backups, differential backups, the transaction log backups, and it's quite easy to check if it is correctly done.
Yes, of course, and also in terms of disaster recovery, let's say in terms of backup, also you could restore, if you delete your database, you could restore the database from the last backup. Okay, so at the end, yes, I think that is more easy for us as a DBA to run this type of process.
Okay, let's go back to the presentation, and I will put my hat of developer, and I want to back up and to restore my backup from on-premises to managed instance. Is that possible?
Yes, it's possible. Also, we have some recommendations about it when you run your backup. So when you run your backup from on-premise to MI, we would like to give these tips and tricks about how to do this backup. I think that beside all these sorts of things, I would like to recommend to run the backup using checksum. Okay, because if you're not using this checksum, when we restore the data in managed instance, we are going to run this process, and the end this process will take time. In order to run this, if you didn't specify checksum, we are going to run for you the rechecked event. So depending on the size, you are going to have several. You are going to wait more time.
Okay, so let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Once I upload the backup and I restore it on managed instance, do I need to create a manual backup on the managed instance, or is something that is automatic?
It's a pretty good question. Answering your question is going to be automatic, but of course, in managed instance, you could run your backup. You could run manually. The only thing that I would like to remark, two things that is very important if we compare, let's say, with our daily basis that we are doing in on-premises. The first thing is the destination will be blob storage. It's clear. Other things about with copy only. Okay, it's very important. Okay, because at the end, you know that what that means copy only. I'm not going to explain these sorts of things, but it's very important because if not, it's the only way to run the backup. Because in order to prevent, for example, the long chains, to break the long chaining option that we have running the backups. We have other, yeah.
Sorry, I have a question here because you mentioned obviously you use the blob storage. That means that I cannot backup to my from managed instance to my on-premises?
Yeah, it's true. So right now there is not possible to restore the native backup, okay, from managed instance to on-premises. I know that our product team is working on it, but I don't know when we are going to have this option. But because we have many questions from them, from our customers, but you have an alternative. The alternative is to run one thing that is called SQL package that export your data, okay, and you could import this data you on premises right now.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Yeah, one thing, I forgot one thing, Juan, about the disaster, backups, etc. It's about one thing, it's redundant. For me, it's very important. I will like just solve it for 1 minute. It's when you create a database and you specified redundant, that's this option. For example, if no, okay, I'm not going to. So it's just only mention two things. Every replica that you know that every time that you create a one database, you are going to have 3 replicas of your data. Okay, this every replica that you are going to have will, if you mark this option when you create in the database, will have in different zones. Different zone, let's say, it's a different buildings. Let's say we could say in different buildings that contains different, let's say, air conditioner, Ethernet connections, etc. In order to maintain these sorts of things. Okay, so we have several details, but I would like to remark this thing because I think that it's very important about.
Okay, perfect. That's good. It's the same thing that I do when I have my hardware on my location, so it's good. Okay, so once we have already take our backups and we see that we are doing it correctly, we have correctly configured, the backups are working perfectly. The next thing we will do, at least the next task I will face, is the auditing and monitoring. Okay.
Yeah.
And usually my checking list consists on check the replica's health if I have high availability, if there is any failover, and of course the database health and the maintenance events that we can have to check the speed and the performance of those activities, high availability activities. Okay, so in regards to replica's health, it's very important to see if I have all the replicas synced and if there is no delays or if the queues for the replication is not growing and growing and growing. Okay, so we have different tools that most of them are common for the 3 flavors that we are discussing here. On premises, remember that could be on your location or on an Azure virtual machine, Azure SQL Database, and Azure Managed Instance. Okay, we have the activity log, we have extended events, we have in on-premises, only in on-premises, the default health trace for high availability that are some extended events that we are capturing by default. And the resource health, we can add alerts, okay, and we can have specific extended events and other specific tools for diagnose and solve their problems. And also, if we need to change something, we will have all the maintenance tools as configuration, all the alerts, and these two are very important in Azure because you can go for it, and Jose Manuel will show you now how you can go for it in a very, very easy way. Okay, and Jose Manuel, I leave you with a managed instance that you have the error logs, also the management studio reports that we can have in on-premises, and you have some extended events, specific extended events for you. Okay.
Yes, you're totally right in this part, Juan. It's more or less pretty much is the same that you have in on-premises, but in another way, but at the end is the same, right? Because, for example, if I choose one database, for example, that I have in SQL database, for example, I could use one thing that is called resource health. Okay, resource health, basically, it's, for example, if I got any problem in terms of my in my database, for example. Right now, I got an error that my database is degraded for something. So I need to review what happened. I have, sorry, it's in Spanish. I thought that is in English, but I promise that the sorry,
the message for you will
yes,
be in Spanish.
Sorry.
Or will be in the language that you have selected.
Yes, but I promise that it's doing this one. Okay, so sorry. But at the end, you have this one. Even Juan, as you mentioned previously, also I could run and have alert if I want to, let's say, to have an alert in case that, for example, we run an, let's say, reconfiguration. Let's say we could choose if the platform was initiated by the platform or was initiated by the user, or if the database was degraded or not available. I could receive this alert immediately after this situation. So at the end, pretty much is the same that you have.
So you said that you will receive. Where will you receive?
From in the specification that you are going to in the actions. In the action, you can specify, for example, the mail, the address, or whatever you want to say. Yeah.
Okay, so this rings me a bell to the on-premises. So I can create some scripts with extended events in order to check also the health and to send to me an email or send to me an alert to the mobile phone. So it's similar, but in a much easier way.
Yeah, no, it's for the reasons I mentioned before, is the same one. So it's at the end, it's another way. It's more easy for me, but at the end, it's the same that you have in on-premises. So yeah. So other things that I would like to mention is about the activities. So you mentioned one thing that is very important is what happened with my activity. So my database. So in this case, for example, as I mentioned, we could filter what happened with my database, and I'm going to have all the filters here about, okay, for example, let me choose this last week. For example, what happened if something happened with delete the database and change the roles, change something in the database in terms of how let's say the operation, not the data, it's just only the operations, okay? So for example, I have some problems, I cause some problems exporting the data, I receive an activity about the health event has been resolved today, it's very funny, resolved and resuelto. So that's some of the things that is very important, Juan. So at the end, you have the same, yeah.
Okay, and for instance, if I have a failover, okay, obviously I will see it in the failover cluster manager. I will see it in the management studio. I can check it at the health extended events that we take by default, and also I can see it in the error log. How can you see it in managed instance is very similar, but in Azure SQL DB that we have no access to those tools from the instance, how will you check if you have a problem and you fail over?
It's the same manner. The same manner. If I choose my SQL managed instance, I'm going to have also the resource health, okay, that I'm going to have the same situation, okay? So at the end, pretty much it's the same, okay? Of course, as you mentioned, so if I go to my managed instance and I would like to see the error logs, or if I want to run other process, of course that you could review the same details. For example, my managed instance was restarted, let's say, this last 7th of May. So at the end, it's pretty much the same that we have.
Okay, perfect. So
Okay.
let's go back to the next
Yeah.
point that we will take. And I realized that we missed the titles of the 2 slides. Okay, so the next slide should be monitoring and auditing, and we have the title of checking high availability, but it's the wrong title. Okay, in fact, this is monitoring out and auditing. And what we will do here, well, the first thing, maybe we have some audits created on our databases. It could be on premises, it could be on Azure. And maybe we have some audits because we need to see when someone specific is logging, or when someone is deleting records from a database, or inserting records, or dropping a table, or whatever that the audit allow us. Okay. Also, one of the things that I daily do is check for security issues. If we have an attack, if we have a lot of logins that fails, or other kind of security issues. Okay, and of course we will check for our results here. In the case that we are in on-premises, okay, what we will check is if the storage is correct, if the server is correct, if the hardware configuration is correct, if we have high CPU, but we will also check if our queries are running correctly and all that kind of stuff. Okay, about the performance, we will talk later. Okay, but now we will check just the resource, and if all the maintenance plans that we have, for instance, the jobs that run the update the statistics, the index revealed or reorganized, and all that stuff are running in a good way. Okay, for it, we have several tools that we have also alerts. We have also other tools to diagnose that are specific to Azure. Okay, because in on-premises, we mostly have the audit tool and the extended events. Okay, we will check some stuff also in the dashboard that Management Studio provide us, but our main tool will be the extended events. So what do you have in Azure SQL Server Database or in Managed Instance?
More or less, we have the same. So for example, let me go up. Yeah, 1 second. I'm going to move to the demo. Yeah. So at the end, you mentioned one thing that is very important about the maintenance plan. Okay, so the maintenance. So it's one thing here that you could specify when you are going to have this maintenance. Okay, it's very important to specify when you are going to, let's say, receive the last updates in terms of service pack, etc. Okay, so for the reason, it's very important to specify when, because of course that we need to run, I don't know exactly what is the cadence that we have, but right now it's you need to choose this time. In case that something happened, we update and we run the failover in terms that the situation. Also, as you mentioned, we are going to have alerts that you are going to define what was the situation, and you are going to receive the same message about the health state that, okay, we run this update. Also, I think that the last update is we receive an email before 48 or 24 hours before that we are going to run these operations. Other things is about the auditing. You mentioned one thing that for me it's very important is how we are going to know what is the queries that we're running. Well, at the end, you have two differences here. The first is about SQL DB. In SQL DB, we have one thing that is called auditing here, that it's possible to enable this option, and you could save this data in a blob storage or in a local analytics, saving hub, etc. So at the end, you could see through the portal what happened with my database if someone runs something, or of course that you could download this file that is saved in this destination and use this one, because at the end it's an extended event file. So for the reason one, as I mentioned before, is the same. It's the same
Okay.
that we have.
And in regards to security, how can we check if we receive an attack, for instance?
Well, the first thing is audit logs. As you could see here, we have a database authentication succeed event. More or less, it's the same that you have in in on-premises, sorry, of course, SQL Azure and Managed Instance, we have a hardware that protects your connection, protects multiple things, okay, but I'm not going to talk about it. But answering your question, basically, it's going to the overview, go to, for example, beside the failed logs and etc., you could see add a metric here that you could choose, for example, a failed connection. So if I receive something, failed connection, let's say file connection, the login file, for example, password is wrong, you are going to receive this one. Just only, I would like to clarify one thing. So we are going to protect the connection first. What that means? That means that we have a hardware that if you try to connect using, for example, wrong password on raw user, or you are running a brute force attack, you are not going to receive this message, because we are going to, let's say, to protect this before reaching your server. Okay, so for the reason it's very important to remark, because failed connection is just only when it's failed connection. The rest is just managed by Microsoft.
Okay.
In the similar manner that you mentioned, Juan, in managed instance, of course, if you moved, in the similar manner you have in on-premises, you could choose the security, right? So you could select both in a login auditing, you could say choose both failed and successful connect logins, and you are going to have this information in the error log. So at the end is pretty much, let's say I'm going to say that it's the same. So of course, you could add security auditing, server auditing in managed instance. That is not possible in SQL DB. So at the end, it's very similar that we have in on-premises.
Okay, so when we decide to go for Azure SQL DB, that only provide me with a database, with a service for the database, not for the instance, I will not be able to create a server audit or to check the error logs or the profiler or the extended events. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
And where do I find that information? In the portal, as you have shown now?
Yeah, I like this question, Juan, because I remember that we discussed time ago about it. About the SQL, as I mentioned before, using SQL auditing, okay, SQL auditing, you could see everything that happened in your database in terms of these SQL command statements, okay? Connections, login, filed in Azure SQL Database. In managed instance, you need to implement, as you mentioned, security auditing. One thing that I would like to mention is we have many questions that, okay, in SQL DB, it's possible to implement a SQL profiler. I say, well, in SQL Database, not. In SQL Managed Instance, yes. But we have in SQL DB, we have one option that you could use in Azure Data Studio that you could run the profiler. It's a plugin that it's possible to know what happened in my database more or less the same way that you have in your SQL profiler. So I'm able to see all the data, what happened in my database, etc. Okay, so this is the different tools, options that we have in order to do it.
Okay, nice. So let's say that we have go through our auditing and everything is fine. We have no security issues. All the maintenance plans that we have are working fine. The status of all the servers are correct. And now I will go to one thing that is very important to my customers, that is the performance. Okay, so as a DBA, what they detect is if we have any high CPU or overloading the CPU, how is our IO going, and if we are logging correctly. Also, I will check if we have any timeout, any error, any excessive waits, or if we have queries that are lasting or consuming more resources than used to. Okay, and of course, if I'm a good DBA, I will take this with my alerts, because I will have scripts to send to me an alert if we have high CPU or whatever. And I know that you have some cool tools that allow you to, let's say, receive some recommendations. Okay. When I am in on-premises, I mostly use as a one-shot overview the dashboard that Management Studio provides. Okay, but we also have, as we said, the extended events, and of course we have a lot of DMVs that we can run. The good thing of the dashboard reports that we have on Management Studio for performance is that we have unified a lot of DMVs of the output of the DMVs and a lot of extended events that we usually run. Okay, we have put it together in just one screen. So we will show it now. But Jose Manuel, also we have some specific tools for Azure. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct. So let me show you an example. I would like to start with the last thing that you mentioned about the DMVs and the reports, because I think that is normally it's one thing that we use as a DBA. So as you can see in Azure SQL DB, there is not possible to obtain this such of reports. Okay, so when I run the reports, I don't have the list, let's say, the reports that we have. But if I go to, let's say, to manage instance, as you can see, we have the same reports, more or less the same report that we have in on-premises. So if
Let's go to the performance dashboard.
Yes, yeah. I don't have any workload right now, Juan, but once we have this, as you can see, the DMV is the same, and we are going to obtain the same data that you have. Yeah.
Okay, so that's wonderful because it is something that I am used to. I use it in on-premises, so I can use also with managed instance. Okay, so there I can go through the CPU and the weights, also the logs, the queries that are spending more time on using more resources. So that's great. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that all of the DBAs are using this dashboard because it's like a summary of all the extended events and the DMVs that we have to check performance.
Yeah, yes, and the end is the same. Also, we could use other tools. But in Azure SQL Database, I would like to show you several details about, let's say, the performance, okay, in terms of performance. As you could see, you mentioned about what happened. Right now, I could see what happened about my database. Even I could ping this in my dashboard. So when I run this in my dashboard, I'm going to have this screen basically when I open the portal, okay? But also I could add other metrics about my SQL database. For example, in this case it's DTU, but more or less it's the same. I could use what happened with my CPU percentage. I could use what happened with the data IO, log IO, the similar things that we're doing every day in order to review what happened. If I need to know what happened historical data, so basically I need to change here about what is the details, what is, for example, when I need to receive the data, what happened, for example, the last 4 hours, 12 hours, or even I could choose the custom in order to see what happened, let's say 3 days ago, 4 days ago, etc. Just only one, I would like to remark one thing. It's very important to know that if you choose, for example, 4 hours, the time granularity, the number of points that you are going to see here in the graphics will change automatically to 5 minutes. Okay, it's not the same for the reason when you are, let's say, working with you on premises. It's very important. For example, as you can see here, I have the max is max, but that means that is the max value that you have within 5 minutes. Okay, so if you need to have the minimum number is 1 minute. Okay, what happened? For the reason I used to change, instead to use max, I used to recommend to use the average. Okay, because you could have some spikes. It's normal in your database. Okay, so as I mentioned, you have more other reports about. For example, you could run multiple other things. For example, let's say how many deadlocks I have, or for example, to know how many sessions, how many connections that I have cause the high CPU, for example, etc. So, and the end is very useful in SQL DB in order to obtain this data.
Okay, so you can do your own performance dashboard.
Yeah. Yes, you could
Okay.
own, you do
And
perform
in
that.
on-premises, we have something that is query store that is very useful because it allows us to check the queries and the evolution of the queries and the different versions of the queries. Do you have
Yeah.
something similar in Azure?
It's the same one. So just only I would like to mention one thing before going to the query data store. It's about the performance recommendations. Just only I would like to mention one thing that is very important. It's about you could see this information is based on query data store, and the end is the same. So at the end, when you run the performance inside, more or less is the information query data store, but in another graphical way, in order to see what happened with my database, what is the query that's taking too much time, etc. Just only before, as I mentioned, go to go to the query. Yeah.
Sorry, just one question. And in
Yeah.
that graphic, can I see, as I do in on-premises, if that query is consuming more CPU or more storage?
You could do it. Yeah, you could do it. For example, you could see this query. For example, the query number, query based on the query data store 1842. You could see how much time, the number of executions. If I click here, I could see what was the query, what was the consumption that I have, and also per hour. More or less, is this information one is the same information that we are going to find in the query data store. Okay, but basically, that's it.
That's
okay.
perfect. Sounds quite good.
Yeah, no, it's very good because at the end, is the source of the data is the same, but we have. Just only, I would like to mention about the performance recommendation because in SQL database, you have several details about to tuning, the automatic tuning that you have, that we have. It's to force the plan, suggestions about indexes, etc. About in SQL database. So it's one thing. Before going to, I would like to mention one thing more before going to the query data store. It's about, you mentioned one thing that I like it, Juan, is timeouts, and also blocks, and also deadlocks. You know how, for us, it's how difficult it is in order to find this data. For example, timeouts, no, because in query data store we have a new way, but it's how to obtain this data. So for this reason, one thing that we have for SQL Managed Instance, SQL Database, the option that we have is to specify if I have any error in my database, or if I have any timeouts, or if I have any blocks on deadlocks, you could instruct to SQL Server to capture this information, basically using extended events, but without defining this. It's just only this automatic way. And you are going to save this data in one thing that is called Log Analytics Workspace. In this set of things, go to the log word summary. You could use one plugin that we have about that is called Azure SQL Analytics, that you could choose the number of databases that you have in managed instance or SQL database. If you click this one, you are going to see a bunch of details about query executions, total queries, number of errors, timeouts, blocking, etc. So you could go deeper and try to analyze, for example, what happened with this error, and review multiple things that, of course, that is very important. It's very important for us about to review, for example, the different errors that I have in my database.
Sorry, Jose Manuel.
Yeah.
We will receive a timeout if we continue.
Yeah.
This is very interesting, but we need to go
Yeah.
forward
So,
because we will receive a timeout.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, using the query timeout, Juan, I'm going to say that is the same. So you could use in the same manner that we have. Okay. So
yes, but
yeah.
what I see is that both DBAs, the on-premise DBAs and the Azure DBAs, are doing mostly the same. But in Azure, we do in a different way. Maybe it's more automated way. And what we need to do is just to get used to that new way to do the same stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. It's the same. So at the end, it's the same. Yeah.
So let's go at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, we try to help others. Okay. Of course, this is just our agenda. You help others all the time. But I remember that most of the questions that I have from the developers, it's about connection timeouts, and they used to to put the blame on SQL Server, and they say,
Wow.
hey, something is wrong with the database because I received a connection timeout. So we have a couple of slides just to explain a little bit about this. Is that correct?
Yes. This is the point. This is the questions that we have. Just only I would like to mention that it's very important when you are working with developers. It's very important to clarify what happened connections timeout and command timeout. Basically, it's connection timeout is when you try to connect to the SQL Server, and command timeout means when you receive the reply from the SQL Server. That is called executions. Okay, it's very common. It's very important to clarify this to the developers about it, because when you receive the message from the developers, oh, I'm not able to connect, I'm not able to run the query. It's very important to clarify these sorts of things. Okay, in order to have this. What is the basic characteristics about the connections timeout? Basically, it's the connection timeout belongs to the connection uptime. You can modify it, the connection timeout, okay, and could be temporary and permanent. We have different tools that we are going to leave in the PPT about it. And what is the command timeout? Basically, this is one thing. I would like you just to remark one thing, because we have many questions from developers. It's the value is configured at application level. So we don't have in SQL Server a command timeout. So it's very important to clarify this, because many customers say, okay, no, it's the SQL Server timeout. No, it's how much time you are going to wait for the execution. Okay, and there is no default value. And also, in terms of command characteristics, also I would like to share with you several power cells that we have in this link in order to obtain latency and connections timeout. Okay, so we reach at the end of the session. Thank you so much for this conversation, Juan, about it. We mentioned you have the blog and YouTube channel that we use to add articles about many things about the findings that we are finding every day with working with customer. And right now it's time for questions.
It looks like we have some questions. That's great.
So I'm not able to see. Okay, I'm not able to see the questions, but
No.
But you could...
There are no questions online and no questions on site. I guess
Okay.
you explained everything so well that everything is clear.
Thank
That's
you.
great. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
if
you
you
so
have
much.
anything to add, you have still 4 minutes, but it depends on you.
I think that we could summarize the situation, no, Juan? So what is
Yes.
I think that at the end, as you will see, Juan is from premises, myself from SQL Database, and the end, the tools that we have, let's say, the same tools that you could use in on premises. So at the end, the tags that you're using is pretty much is the same. So I think that we could summarize this one. So
yes, because when you have that limitations, for instance, when you have managed instance, you cannot access the server. Okay, so you cannot check by yourself the server. So you need to go to the portal, and Azure will provide you the tools to be able to check how is going your CPU, how is going your IO, how is going everything outside the instance, everything related with the quad server. Okay, and when you have Azure SQL DB, you don't have access to the instance tools, you don't have access to the server tools, so you just need to rely on the portal, okay? And the portal, what we'll do is to summarize all that information to you. You will not need to script. The portal will provide you all that information, and you just need to configure it as Jose Manuel has shown, okay? So,
excuse me, sorry
yes.
to interrupt, because we just got one question online.
okay.
And the question is from Shimon Lasota. He's asking, what about Azure Monitor SQL Insights?
Yes, it's a new tool that we have. We didn't have the time to show you, but pretty much it's the same that we have with analytics, but it's a new tool that is working very well. Yeah, it's another tool that we have in this one. Yeah.
Do you have access to it online, Jose Manuel?
No, not right now. No, I didn't prepare this one.
Okay. And what does it do exactly?
More or less is the similar information that we have here about the performance. Okay, so at the end, it's pretty much is the same that we have here. We have several other reports, but we could see the same information, but in another way.
Okay, nice. Any other questions?
So there was only one question. I guess we can close with that one because there are no other questions and there is only 1 minute left.
Okay, so the summary is that all that you can do in on-premises, scripting, it's more easy to do in Azure, and you have only certain limitations. For instance, we cannot get dumps on Azure. Okay, so you will not be able to analyze those kind of stuff that creates a dump. But they have on Azure different approach to manage those errors or those kind of issues that involves them. Okay, but the rest is basically the same stuff with different ways to access it.
Okay, so thank you so much again for having us in this session. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with you our experience. Let's see if we see in another sessions. Thank you so much for everything.
As always, it's a pleasure
Thank
to
you so much.
participate on SQL Day, and a pity to not be able, for health reasons, to be there
Next time.
in person.
Next time.
Yeah.
Yes, next time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you also for being here with us. It was really interesting, I think, for others also to see this form of session, like a discussion between two persons, because this way, I guess, they didn't have to question things that they were interested in, and we hope to see you next year also.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.